Okay, I have 4 basic forms here drawn, and I want to shade them in marker and get some practice with the marking pens. So first I'm going to take a micron pen. I'm using an 05. If you want to start with an 01 or an 02 or an 03, you may do that. But since I'm just tracing, I feel pretty positive I can get what I need. I have the ability to turn my paper. And I can see the tracing down underneath, so I have a pretty confident idea of what I'm doing. Where I've made a mistake here, I want to just shade the part that I want to be graded on. So basically you're going to ignore any mistakes that you've done and shade it up to the proper line there. I'm going to put a sheet of paper underneath to protect my drawing board because I don't want the marker to leak through. So I have a clear sheet of plastic here that I'm basically going to put underneath to make sure that I'm protecting my table. We basically said that there were 5 degrees of light and shadow that we wanted to depict. Okay? You remember that they are, if this is light and this is shadow, then highlight is our lightest. Basically, I want that to be paper white. The light, I'm going to use my 10% marker. So I'm using Prismacolor Cool Gray for this. This is my Cool Gray 10%. My next lightest light is my reflected light, which is part of my shadow and hangs out over here between the cast shadow and the edge of the object. For that, I'm going to use my 30%. I have shadow core and cast shadow. This I'm going to use 50%, and this I'm going to use 70%. That way, I haven't used my 90 and my 100, so if I make a mistake, I can go even darker into those areas and I can recover from that. I'll show you what I mean. I start the same way that I started with my pencil. Step 1 is to divide light from shadow. So take your 50% marker. No, take your 30% marker, sorry. Let's get my markers lined up here. I've got 10, 30, 50, and 70. Okay, so first I'm going to divide light from shadow. I take my 30% marker and I say if on this circle there's going to be a C shape coming through, then I draw that C shape in here. And then I keep going in that contour around and around this way. And if I want to smooth it out, I go in a contour this way here as well. So I'm using cross contour marks to fill in the side of that circle. Then I do that on the ground too, because this is going to be shadow down here, right? Of course, we know that our shadow is going to go fairly dark, right? To our 70%. So maybe I don't even need to do that. Here, where this shadow hits this object right here, that's where my shadow core is going to be. So everything over here, notice I'm moving this in a rounded shape as I go around and around and around. The other contour goes up and down. This is all going to be in shadow. I'm moving this towards the vanishing point or straight up and down. And then where this point hits here, right through the middle of that cone, I want to put all this into shadow. All right, so with my 30%, I've divided light from shadow. I could go here onto the ground, but I'm not going to do that because I know I want to go darker up there. So I'm going to take my 50% next, and I want to divide the light and shadow. Into core. So right here at the line between light and shade, I'm going to put a darker line. Now I'm going to look at the soft edge, right? So number 3, I'm going to soften the edge between core and reflected. So to soften the edge, if I have too hard of a jump, I go back a marker. So I go back up to my 30 and I pull some of this 50 down across into my 30 to sort of soften that line. And you'll see when it dries that makes that so you can hardly even see the transition. I'm dragging in a cross contour across those lines, pulling them down towards the 30 to make a transition between my 50 and my 30. Step number 4, I want to get cast. And I'm going to do from 70 to 50 because I want to have it a little bit lighter out at the end. So I'm going to take my 70, I'm going to go right up against my object with my darkest shadow. I'm going to begin stroking that out towards the outside edge. And then while it's still wet, I grab the next one back, go to the 50, and pull that edge to soften it, rub back and forth to soften it, and then pull your 50 all the way out to the end. This one I'm going to do backwards. I'm going to start with the 50. And go back to the 70. But you'll see that when I get to the edge, I'm going to have a ragged or an abrupt edge between the 50 and the 70. So I need to go back to my 50 to smooth that out. In order to get a smooth transition, you have to go back a marker to one marker lighter. Sometimes I do what I call chipping in. So if this edge of the marker here is straight, instead of trying to hold my marker straight up and down on the paper and do this, where I get this kind of a ragged edge like that, I'll turn the marker so that it faces the edge of the brick, and I'll put that right up against the line, and then I move the marker in a horizontal way across the paper so that I get all of that filled in up in there. Looks like my 50%'s a little weak. It probably needs some more mineral spirits in it. If you have a pointed area at the end and you want to turn your marker around, that's what that's for, is to get those tiny little spaces. But don't start with that end. Go as far as you can without it, because otherwise you're going to get a streaking or a striping along there. So now I've got 50, 70, and this here is 30, and this is 50. So I'm now going to take my 10%, but now I'm going to leave the paper white. I want to leave the highlight, so I know that's the top of this, and there's going to be a streak right down the middle. So I'm going to take my 10%, I'm going to go like this to define. Maybe I want to turn it around to really define the edge of that streak. Say I'm going to leave that white, and then this here I can fill in with my 10% marker. Usually it's good to go in both directions so I get that nice blending. Right here I want to get in with my point so I can make this edge nice and sharp. Out here I'm going to leave that white circle in there. I want to make sure I'm going in a contour with my circle here. Around and around, so you can see that because I made a pen mark here, you can still see it, but because I've shaded up to here, you see that I know which one I really want to be graded on, which one I want people to see. And that I really do know what I'm doing. I just make mistakes sometimes. What does they say? If you're going through hell, then keep going. If you stop when you've made a mistake, then your paper will forever have that mistake on it. But if you keep going and you correct it, then people will see that you changed it and your drawing will get better. For this, I'm just going to take my 10%. I'm going to shade this entire side of the cube. If you can't see that, sometimes you want to turn your paper over. You'll get a little bit darker. If you turn to the other side, you can get a more velvety finish sometimes. If you finish both sides of the page, it's not that important to me, but it's just something you may want to know. So this is what we would do in a grayscale. These are our steps. These are our divisions of light. And these are our 4 finished forms in light and shadow in marker.